uh, dealing with, what are we going to do when it comes to inspecting for our lighting and power in all of this? Oh, hello, John. And so I think when that is a conversation that happens, I think there's a lot of things that maybe are a little bit uh, misleading or misunderstood um, in all of that. And oops, I don't know. Troy, would you say that that's often something that you might hear about is, the lighting and the electrical when it comes to energy? There's just a lot that is probably misunderstood about what we would technically need to do when it comes to the energy code.
Absolutely. I think the electrical section of the energy code is kind of like the energy code to the rest of the codes. It seems to be the last thing that everybody learns. Everything is a little bit confusing because it's just not something that we've dealt with on a regular basis. And it's all brand new because it's electrical as well.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. Are the slides available? Yes, the slides are available. I will see what I can do while I am chatting to be able to get that into the chat there. Uh, Troy, would you mind throwing a
I'll jump
hand
on
up
it.
here? You rock. All right. Now you guys can, you know, walk along with us. So, kind of alluding to a little bit of, as we were discussing here, um, we were trying to kind of present some of the maybe challenges that have been perceived when it comes to I am an inspector and what I'm doing. I, you know, I happen to inspect out of the red book. I don't do green. The reality is we have to think of things a little bit differently and bring Christmas into our lives. And I say that because when we're talking about it, this is not a battle that's going on between the electrical code and the energy code. It's actually something that works together and is comparable. So what I want everybody to understand that the New Mexico energy code, or I'm sorry, New Mexico electrical code, the NEC here, what it's governed is it's doing things like how are we sizing the wire, what type of wiring can we use, right? The installation practices that we have to do, what type of panel, where does it go, how are we wiring it, where is it going to be hooked up? Those are the types of things that the NEC is actually referring to. So when we talk about some of the lighting and electrical components when it comes out of the energy code, they're looking at it in a slightly different fashion. It's not how it's being wired or anything of that nature. It's things like lighting power densities, how much lighting can be installed, right? What type of controls? We need to ensure that the correct controls have been placed uh, where they should be. And then, just outright energy conservation items such as the type of lighting and the efficiency of the lighting when we are trying to utilize lighting for our plant growth, right? So there are other energy conservation items that come into play, but the reality is on it too, when we are inspecting some of these things, it is really mindful for us in the sense that what we need to do is realize that this is a team effort. So we need to go out. We need to ensure that these things have been installed because we've talked about a lot of electrical items. The last couple of weeks we talked about daylighting controls or daylighting overall, and then we talked about lighting controls and the functions that they have to have and what we need to do with them. And that can seem incredibly, um, you know, I just lost the word I was going to say, scary, or that's not the word I was going to use, but we're going to use that for the moment. But just becomes, really, really cumbersome. And the reality is that's not it at all. A lot of times we have things that assist you, such as if you go into 408 of the energy code, the commercial side of it, what it does for you is it now talks about commissioning. Commissioning is something that's going to verify that the system actually works the way that it's intended to. So, in this instance, as long as the designer thought about it and placed it on plans and said, hey, we're going to ensure that we have this lighting control here, and then provides us with the sequence of operation on the plan so that that's how it's going to be set up, we as inspectors go out into the field and verify, okay, we have the control. That's all we are truly, expected to kind of do, is ensure that the control is there, because a commissioning agent's going to come out, and that or commissioning agent, the field verification agent, they are going to ensure that that occupancy sensor meets all the criteria that it's intended to actually do. So we have assistance within the code itself. So this is where I want to, really kind of hit home, is kind of follow that practice, right? This is not a new phrase. Anybody who's ever attended, these webinars over the last 3 years knows that, we talk about inspecting what you expect, right? So there is a way to do this where we're working as a team on it. If we get it it's designed in, it's on the plans, we can get it out in the field, we can then verify it, and we're all working together to get to a common goal.
All
All
right,
right.
just a quick heads up,
Oh,
guys.
yes.
I threw the file in the chat. It was for a different lighting control. So I'm going to get the right one in there. I do apologize. Didn't mean to confuse you with having the wrong slides and printout there.
You just got a bonus. That's all. Troy
Yeah,
was feeling very
extras.
generous this morning. All right, so here's the section that you all know I love and is near and dear to my heart, right? C103.2, because I know that this is a section that talks about what needs to be placed on the plans. And a lot of times people consider this section as an architect section and the plans examiner section of the code, right? And the reality is, it's also there for when you're going out to do inspections, because if these items are not placed on the plans, they're probably not being done out in the field. And then you are not able to inspect for them. So while this does say information for construction documents, it is really helpful for you too. And here are the items out of that section that really pertain to the fun and excitement that we've been talking about all month long. And that's, our lighting, our electrical things. So number 8, I think, is often thought about as what are the mechanical ones, but we all know there's system controls that are required when it comes to the electrical and lighting side. And then, of course, 11 and 12 are, we've talked about, this month, just about, all of the fun and excitement. We need those fixture schedules. We need to know how much wattage was designed. Is it permitted? Do we have enough? Do we have too much? Right? And our daylight zones. Troy had fun with you all last week talking about daylight zones. So the first thing that when we're talking about for inspections, when it comes to the interior lighting power allowances, there are, 2 options in there. But when it comes to inspections, whether they use the building area method or they use the space by space method, um, it doesn't matter too much to you, but what it does produce is this report if they utilize ComCheck to its fullest extent. They provide a report. If they don't provide a report like this, they are still required to provide you with the calculations. That's one of the items that's listed here. Number 11, lighting fixture schedule with wattage and control narratives. That's what ComCheck basically does for you in one report, in an easy to read report. So we know that we would look at this, right? So we know that, all right, it looks like it's good. So this is something that's addressed at plan review. But in turn, what it does for us as inspectors is now we have what we see on the screen here. And ultimately, what we would then do with this is it says in this room, I'm going to have 15, A lightings in there. I ultimately, when I go out there, you know what I'm doing for my amount of lighting is I'm going through and counting how many fixtures are actually up in the ceiling or on the wall, wherever it ends up being placed, and verifying that that's what's going on out in the field. And I know a lot of people are like, well, I don't think that that's something that's necessarily an issue. But I know some of you have heard this story before. Is, I had a electrical inspector who was like, okay, you know what? I got some stuff in the energy code, and he was trying to figure out how to incorporate that into what he was already doing. And he had a good plan going. So he went out there and just thinking about it, he's like, okay, well, these plans show that there's 15. So he counted. There wasn't 15, there was more than 15. So he started going around and he noticed that all the rooms had more lighting than what was shown on the plans. So he started doing his calculations, keeping track of how many of what fixture he had. He told the contractor, hey, I got to go back to the office because it appears you have more lighting and I don't know whether we can do it. So I'm not going to pass you and I'm not going to fail you. I'm going to go back and do a little bit more research. He came back into the office and he asked me, he's like, hey, Hope, this is what I found out in the field. Is it okay? And I said, well, let's pull out their ComCheck and look. So we pulled out the ComCheck and they exceeded the amount of wattage that they were permitted. And so ultimately they had to remove some lighting. Well, needless to say, that word got around that there's the electrical inspector is actually going around and counting lights. And honestly, he only had to do that once because word did get around. And so now everybody ensures that if it says 15 in this room, they are doing 15 in this room. So he implemented that concept of, inspect what you expect. And he got his fruits of it. It took a little bit of extra time in the beginning, but in the long run, it paid off dividends for it.
Well, and it's also great when you do that as an inspector because you're kind of setting the tone of what you're looking for all the way through the project. So there's no surprises. There's nothing
Yeah.
that says, "Hey, you didn't do this last time. Why are we doing this now?"
Yeah,
So it really sets that
absolutely.
tone, and it helps everybody because then they know what to expect. There's no time lost going, "Oh, he's going to let me, he or she's going to let me slide on this, and I'll be able to get that at a later date." They know it needs to be there for the inspection, so we're not holding up the job for the next day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Now here's the really fun one. So we know that we're talking about dwelling units in commercial projects. So, your R2s, R3s, and R4s that are more than 3 stories above grade, right? In this instance, they have to ensure that all of their lighting is, or 90% of their lighting is high efficacy per what the new criteria is in the code. So a lot of times people are like, well, what the heck am I doing? Am I just going around counting everything? And I think in the past, absolutely, when we had that 50-50 split, there was a lot of counting going on. Now, it's not so much that you have to count all the light bulbs, right? But what you may end up doing is obviously you're going to look through, and if you found lighting that wasn't high efficacy, that's when you're going to start paying attention. Otherwise, if what you're seeing is, CFLs everywhere, right? Some LEDs everywhere, then you would just kind of feel like, okay, we're good. But if you see, a LED and then you see an incandescent, then you see an LED and then you see an incandescent, that's when I start worrying about having to count. This one almost is it's in the code. There's been so much with this, and the lighting industry has really taken hold of all of this. And, obviously, they don't want to produce something that they can't sell. And so that, you know, has helped our efforts as inspectors to, while it's in the code, it's probably not as cumbersome as you would think it would be, or time consuming. All right, plant growth. All right, 95% of those luminaires have to have the photon efficiency, and everybody who knows me and has had the opportunity to see me try to say this word while in this class, we know that it is a micro per joule. All the electrical people, you can shout it out at me. I don't see my Sparky in there to cover me on this one, but we got to make sure that it's a 1.6. And so how I would address this is I'd say, provide me with, make sure that you keep a box for me, keep a, installation instruction, something so I can just verify that it's there. Honestly, most of the time, that is what they're going to utilize, because as you can see on the screen here, often when they are growing plants indoors, here's dirt, plant, grow lights, dirt, plant, grow lights, dirt, plant, grow lights. So it's just this enormous stack, right? So they are utilizing a lot of lighting, and trust me, they don't want to spend an arm and a leg either. So they will be more than happy to be utilizing these. So again, while it is a counting game, I don't think that it's as much of a counting game as it may feel just looking at what the code is. Because once that information is out there, they're going to use the more efficient lighting for it, just as it did for a regular everyday life. Oh, hey, Troy, we got exterior lighting. It's kind of like our interior lighting concept, wouldn't you say?
A bit, yes, except for the exceptions for stairs and um, egress paths.
Yeah. Yeah, our exterior lighting power density has a lot, but I of exceptions, but I would say, just like Troy mentioned, there's some really uh area common areas that like all projects have, right? They all have, well, they should all have egress. I guess I shouldn't assume, Troy, but I would say I'm gonna go out on a limb. What do you think?
Yeah, they should all have an egress out of there, and that needs to be lit up correctly. And that's that exception that says, occupant sensors down to 50% in the egress path, then going back up. But with that, the lighting density per square foot based on how it's used, whether it's parking or entryways, that's huge on there as well.
Absolutely. Well, this again is where we have ComCheck that helps us to meet those requirements, right? It's a great tool to be able to have. So if again we look at a report, here's kind of what we're worried about and what we're looking at. So this it's gonna actually work today. Nope. Okay. Well, I was hoping to find, oh, there it is. So here we're going to look, it says in this that they have 10 fixtures in their parking area. So ultimately, what we would do is come over here. We're outside. We can count that there are 10 fixtures, right? So it's again, it's really fun to go out and count. It brings you back to your childhood. Brings me back to my childhood. What about you, Troy?
Yeah, it makes me think of Sesame Street. One of
Yeah,
these things is not like the other.
see. All right, now here comes the lighting control criteria. As I mentioned earlier, this requirement for inspectors really does feel like um, a lot of stress. Now, I know that I mentioned that we should feel like Christmas, right? The red book and the green book working together, or, like red chili and green chili. I'm just saying. And it it is something that it would be great that the electrical inspectors are going out there and doing this, taking that load off because they're already looking at to see all these other things. But if it were to fall on a different inspector, maybe the electrical inspector is out for a week on vacation in the Bahamas, right? Well, it's okay because the true aspect of this or the reality of this is when we're talking about all these controls, all you need to do is ensure that they are actually there. You don't have to worry about whether or not they work properly or not work properly, but they've been designed to meet the criteria that's listed in the code for their functions, because that's going to be addressed by commissioning. All of your lighting controls are required to be commissioned. So that means somebody else is going to verify that it shuts off 20 minutes after it's activated, type of deal, that it's been programmed for it. But it can't be programmed if if it wasn't installed. So that's basically what we really, really need to do. All right. Troy, I'm going to ask you a really quick question. Are my slides still showing?
Yes, they are.
Okay. All right. Um, okay. Oh, there we go. Came back. Okay, perfect. I was trying to remember what the next slide was. All right. So what you see on the screen here is all of the areas that are not going to have controls. So the biggest one that I hear about is, when we talk about like occupancy sensors and it says spaces that are less than the 300 square feet, often that's, the utility room, the mechanical room. And so there's a concern about them shutting off as people are working in there because they might not register because they're not, doing the jig in the room. They're just in a spot moving, like this, and it may not register that the hands are moving or they're blocking the sensor type of deal. So there is a time and a place. And so the code says if it is in shut off could endanger the occupant safety and security, that these sensors or these controls are not required. Now, all of the items that you see on the screen here are going to be addressed at plan review. You, as an inspector, would just need to verify that whatever control has been called out is actually installed in there. And you're going to be like, gosh, Hope, you are repeating yourself. And I'm going to apparently keep repeating myself. But as Troy mentioned, you'll notice, and he was alluding to, was the fact that the emergency and egress that's required there is exempted out of there because it talks about, that's normally off during operation. So we see that all the time on the plants, right? So, oh, yay. We're just going to smile and hope that it works. There we go. All right, I alluded to occupancy sensors. Sometimes when we think of these, we think of occupancy sensors and that they turn on when you come into the room. And most of the time that's how they are. But they also need to have the function that they turn off, right? And that's what we are really concerned with. We want to ensure that all of these spaces have their occupancy sensors. And again, it's something that should be on the plans. And then what we're going to do is just ensure that they actually have been put in place. Now, how they have to function is really kind of dependent on where we're looking, right? Anything outside of a warehouse, an open office, or a corridor, they're going to shut off 20 minutes after, everybody's left. And then you're going to have a manual on or an automatic turn on that goes to that 50%. And then have a manual control that allows those occupants to be able to, turn things off. What do you think, Troy? Have you had a lot of fun with occupancy sensors out in the field?
Uh, a lot of fun, and the even more fun part is trying to find the manual overrides. Because
Oh, yeah.
depending upon where the building is and how it's zoned, I've had the overrides actually outside of the office areas. So you had to hit a button or turn a key on before you walked in. So those are things to remember when you're doing your inspections to verify that it's working.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. See, Troy, amazing you are here today. All right. Well, I said except for warehouses and open offices and corridors, so we might as well talk about them. So our warehouses, this is almost a fun one because I always think about like if I were going out and doing an inspections for a warehouse, what would be a lot of fun would be to, you have the aisles, the open area, and the aisles have to be independently controlled. So to verify that, I think it would be fun to run down and then run down an aisle and see if what lights pop on. And when I say run, we all know how well Hope runs. So that in itself would be fun for all those there to watch. So I'd be the entertainment for the day. So again, that would be what I would look at because that lets me know that the sensors are there because they are functioning, right? They're turning on. They aren't going to probably turn off, but I'm not worried about them turning off because in those instances, more than likely, they're more than a few feet above my head, right? They're, probably 20, 30 feet above my head, maybe in some instances for a warehouse. So to me, putting the fun in inspections, that's how I would go about and do it. I know that it turns on. Now I don't know about the reduction of the power, after 20 minutes, because the reality is I don't have an extra 20 minutes to wait around. You probably don't have an extra 20 minutes to wait around. I mean, if I'm standing there talking to the super and we're doing things and it happens to shut off within that 20 minutes, okay, great. We can call it good. But otherwise, again, that's going to get verified with the commissioning agent as opposed to me. What do you guys think? You guys want to go running down a warehouse aisles now?
Hey,
It
Hope,
is
can we go back
fun.
one slide for a second?
Absolutely.
So on here, we also have that if it's not on an occupancy sensor, it must be on a time
Oh,
control switch. So is that a manual switch that we turn on each aisleway and then it turns off after 20 minutes?
that is an excellent question. So the occupancy sensor would be the 50% and 20. If it's going to be on a time switch control, it would then have to go over to the section that deals with time switches that has the various schedule for it. Great question, Troy.
Thank you. I get lucky once in a while.
Oh, you get lucky more than once in a while. All right, occupancy sensors. So when we're talking about open offices, that's always a fun one because it used to, a long time ago, it said offices had to have occupancy sensors, and then the whole new fad was to have the open offices. So how do you deal with that? Well, let me tell you. If that space is less than 300 square feet, then you're going to just have the normal occupancy sensor requirements into it. If that space is more than 300 square feet, now what you're going to do is you are going to have an occupancy sensor that after 20 minutes, it shuts off the lighting for it. You're also going to have some controls that basically you kind of have like a dimmer, right? So that it's going to be that it reduces down to up, down to, or up to, I guess, however you want to look at it, 20%. It can't go less than, so it's not shutting it off altogether. It's just reducing the amount of lighting that's in there. Um, uh, Once everybody has left that zone. So with the zones, each zone cannot be greater than 600 square feet. They can make them, smaller, like I want 100 square feet and 100 square feet and 100 square feet, so forth. That's the designer can do that. They just can't exceed 600 square feet in those zones. Now, corridors is one where, everybody has a lot of heartburn over. And don't get me wrong, have a little bit of heartburn about it too. But what I will say is the lights don't completely shut off, right? They're only going to that 50% and then 50%, and they're going to be reducing uniformly so it doesn't feel too bad. Now, if the lighting in the corridor is not as excessive as we typically think of with a corridor, right? If you think about, a hotel, that sucker is lit to the nines, right? But if by chance it happens to have less than 2 foot candles, then that reduction doesn't have to happen. And that's because we're required a certain amount of foot candles for our egress, which you guys all know because we've been talking about egress today. Feels like an egress Thursday. What do you think, Troy?
I think it's an egress Thursday, and the question I always got is, what's a foot candle?
Oh,
So,
that's that funky shaped candle. It's really cool. The middle toe has the wick, and that's and
uh,
when they say it's how many wicks per toe for
uh, yeah. So as an inspector, I never had a light meter out there, so it was always the rough guesstimate was it's the amount of light produced by 2 birthday candles. If you lit those and walked down the hallway, that's how much light you're looking for, or less. So it's not a lot of light.
yeah. Uh, see, we got somebody who wants the foot candle. Maybe we found our new calling in life. Foot candles.
New side hustle.
All right. Getting to the time switch that Troy was referring to earlier. If it's not on an occupancy sensor, it's got to be on a time switch control, unless, of course, it's going to, endanger the occupants. There are some exceptions for it. The big one to remember is the shops and laboratory classrooms. If you're doing schools, we want to make sure that, lights aren't shutting off as they're using their Bunsen burner and whatever it is, or because they are going to follow our footsteps, get into the construction trades because they know how great it is. And they're, using the saw, the table saw. Next thing you know, they have created something beautiful, a 4-fingered hand. So now that foot candle has a 4-fingered hand that goes with it. All right. So again, this is one of the ones that people get really I don't want to say stressed out, but concerned about is when we talk about the requirements for time switch control. All of this should be listed in a sequence of operation on the actual plans. What you want to know is there a time switch control that's been installed in this location for, the lighting system? And so when I go out and I'm inspecting this out in the field, I always bring or require for this part of the inspection is I want the installer, somebody there that's going to show me where this was placed, and not so much that it was programmed, but that it is there and it exists, and where the override controls are going to be located, because as Troy mentioned, they're not always right in the room with you. A lot of times it's in a centralized location, and I think we've seen those where it looks like a light switch, and then it has the little, elongated rectangles, and it has, some information that you would do with it. And then it's like one is controlling the vestibule, one is controlling the office, one is controlling the hallway, right? So there might be one centralized location that's the control panel for multiple locations within the immediate area, right? All right, daylight responsive controls. So again, this is when they are required. And when they are required, there's going to be a lovely control there and going to have function. Oh, yeah. So this is kind of similar for the timer control too. Sometimes you'll see it like this, and then down here will be an override switch. In this particular instance, this is dealing with the daylight control functions. And as you can see, you have different lighting that's happening there. And that's just because these have been programmed to do different things, because it's dealing with this daylight zone or this daylight zone, or the primary and then the secondary. So the primary may not need the lights to be full blown, but the secondary maybe needs it to like 50%, because the carryover lighting is working just fine. So in this instance, again, since I have the installer, the contractor there, and I say, where is your daylight responsive controls at? Then they can show me that here's where the control panel is. Well, I'm just going to call it a control panel, but here's where the controls are. And here's the sensors that are located up in the ceiling. Typically, I can see the sensors located up in the ceiling. What I need to know is, where do you have the actual controls? And I'll ask them. So this one, where is this one controlling, right? So let's say we're talking about this one. Which area is this one? Which area is this controlling? Which area is this controlling? And I ask the question. I have no problem asking questions. Ask Gil, because Gil will let you know. She asks a lot of questions.
The other thing to remember with those controls is that they also have to be an accessible spot. We can't be getting up
Yes,
on scaffolding or three buckets to get to them to make sure that they can be calibrated.
exactly. Exactly. Now, what we have on the screen is how they determine the side lit, day lit areas. These are required to be placed on the plans. And the reason I have this in here is because having a generalized idea of what they're talking about controlling, there's a primary and a secondary. So when you come here and you're looking at these controls and they say, oh, this one is controlling this window and this controlling, this window. And it's like, okay, so we have primary and secondary. They have to be on their own devices, right? And so we have to ensure that we have the controls for the primary and secondary. They're not combined anymore.
So generally speaking, what we're looking for is those two sensors and controls for each daylight area, for the primary
Correct.
and the secondary area, no matter what.
Correct. Now this one is showing three. So because back then there was only a single daylight zone required. So this was area A, this was area B, and this is area C. So we would want like 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B type of deal. Now, really quickly, I know we may or may not have gone over rooftop monitors. There is always a question about, does rooftop monitors count as side lit daylight zones or top lit daylight zones? And I just threw this in here so that everybody understands that if you have this, these are considered to be side lit zones. So they would require that the controls would need to be provided with that. And then I see we have a question. Can the controls be located so the office staff does not alter the settings? Um, it still needs to be in an accessible location, as Troy had mentioned. And it has to be clearly marked. Typically, there is on here, right? It's got to have the continuous dimming and then controls that are going to shut off all of the lighting. But it doesn't necessarily say that it can't be in a location that the staff would be able to alter it, but it would be kind of difficult for it. Um,
On a lot of these
yeah, because
controls, they're computerized, so they have an app that works with them um, to help facilitate being able to set these up. The older ones are analog, so you are able to make those adjustments, but the newer ones coming out are digital, so you can work it off of the control system for the whole building to be able to adjust those. So even though they're located in the office for the occupants, they really can't mess with it.
yeah. All right. So atriums. This is a fun one. A lot of people get a little
We got
um
Carl with the raised hand here, Hope.
oh, I'm sorry. Oh, Carl, go ahead. Have a chat. You should be unmuted
Mute.
where you can ask
Okay.
your question.
Um, okay. The question about can the controls be placed so that the office staff doesn't alter the settings? The issue comes into a competing code where accessibility standards require at least access to the switches within the reach ranges. So we've got a yes, they can be computerized so the settings are established within certain ranges, but the controls themselves still have to be accessible. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. I mean there are some criteria with that, right? So you are right. I mean, we have a multitude of codes that all have to play in the sandbox together. And so we have to figure that out. Now, what this code is saying is they made a conscious effort because it used to say uh, that it had to be accessible, meaning it just had to have the ability that you could have access to it. Now, they went through and changed it to be ready access. Pretty much everything is, ready access. And the reason why they did that is because what they're talking about is they want to ensure that those controls are available to have accessible to be accessed without having to climb a 10-foot ladder to get there. But they were not referring to the fact that it had to be accessible within the accessibility reach ranges. So I realize that that's what it is, but the energy code was making a very conscious effort in the fact that they were not trying to couple it with what accessibility was requiring, or A117, right? What it was trying to do is ensure that, again, you would have the ability that if you had to go into that control, that you could work on that control without having to be on a ladder. But we do understand that there is that idea that you do have to think about the accessibility concept of it. All right, atriums. So this is a fun one. So you have uh, a very unique setup as far as, the daylight zones for them. So you have something like this where you're going to have your daylight zone up here, your daylight zone down here. And so that's going to entail that you're going to have some sensors potentially up on this top floor and sensors down in the actual atrium itself to help monitor for those things. Now, the specific application controls, while this is in the code, a lot of these it's not necessarily now a separate sensor that is having to be installed. A lot of times these are now kind of built into the items that are required to follow C405.2.5, right? Like display cases, that is having it. Some of the supplemental task lighting is already utilizing it. Now, the lighting for plant growth and food warming probably doesn't have it. And the task lighting for the medical and dental purposes might not have those occupancy sensors going on with it. But we do have some instances where it's starting to just make its way into that deal. So all we have to do again is ensure that it's been in there, and then the occupancy sensors and the time switches, those are going to be addressed as far as the functionality of it with your commissioning. And I love this one. So this is dealing with the guest rooms, right? So for our sleeping units, they want to have that the light is going to, and the receptacles are going to turn off, within 20 minutes, right? And so the way that it gets to stay on is you can use a active key card, which is what that is, or another exception is that if it is a sleeping unit and it happens to be for patient care, that one does not have to have the lighting and receptacles on a control. But it does need to deal with the fact that it's going to be on controls. Now, there are further exceptions, not only that, but the task lighting for those medical and dental purposes, plant growth and food warming, and then lighting and dwelling units, because that's already being addressed in a separate section of the code. Then we have the requirement that you have to have those manual controls. And the nice thing is, I think we've all seen those manual controls, and it's not as cumbersome. It's there. That's probably the one thing that we've seen over and over and over again. I always like to put this one on here because remember it said that you also had to have something that was at 50%. So I talk about how they label things. So this is on, this is off, and they call it AV mode. AV mode was where it was every other lighting that was on. And I thought that was actually kind of unique because, sometimes it's like how you present something as opposed to, oh, you must. So that's why I have that one in there. All right. We can't leave the outside alone either. They need to ensure that they are meeting the criteria for exterior lighting controls. So the one thing that it says here is that covered entrances, vehicle entrances are exempt because they have their own criteria for this, so that it addresses things like eye adaptation, because I think we've all done where we been outside, it's a beautiful day outside, and then we go down into the parking garage, and you're like, it is pitch black because your eyes are just not adjusted yet. And I don't know about you, but I put on my brake because I don't want to be on the news for being that person that hit somebody as they were, walking in front of the uh parking garage. So I, there close my eyes a second. I'm like, oh, amazing. Now I can see a little bit better. And so what they've done is they've created a way that you don't have to stop your car and close your eyes to adjust it. It's allowing for an adjustment with it. Anyway, uh, we gotta have daylight shut off, right? This concept is, fairly self-explanatory. So here's an example. This is in a parking lot. It's the same parking lot. We got one half of it that has the lighting in the parking area on, and then the other one that is showing that, oh, wait, I remember there's a section in the code that says, hey, when there's enough daylighting, we don't have to be on because the sun has our back here, right? Let's share the wealth. Let's share the responsibility. So it says, hey, son, take on. Building facade. Again, this is where it gets to be complicated because typically, as a whole, I'm going to just ask by raise of hands. How many of you go out and do inspections at 5 in the morning to see if these lights are turning on or off? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? Bueller? Nope, not even Bueller's doing it.
Carl
So,
does.
do what?
Carl does.
Oh, Carl does. Oh, good job, Carl. Yeah, so this is one of those times that we definitely are going to have to rely on the fact that these are being addressed. Now, sometimes you might luck out that you could see it shut off because maybe you're driving home from work and you're down that road and you know that they're building and that the idea was they were shutting off at 5. Unfortunately, you had to stick around because you had a council meeting and you could see at 6:20 that those lights are off. But otherwise, as a whole, this is again that commissioning agent is going to be your best friend when it comes to lighting. And I'm just telling you, lighting and electrical. Now this, all of this information is kind of complex and everything, but this is where those plans are really going to play a huge role. And so again, you're going to ensure that whatever they say, if it's on a timer, if it's going to be on occupancy sensors, whatever it happens to be, you are just going to ask the question. This is how I address it. Ask the question, where is this timer located for this lighting? And, they're more than happy to take you to there because the reality is they want to pass their inspection and they don't want to wait all day on me either. They're like, if there's a way that we can work together to speed things along, they're more than happy to do it. And then here's one that we all just love. Oh, exterior lighting inspections is typically part of the punch list for issuing a substantial completion certificate. Oh, okay. Well, that's a very nice thing to know. I know for me, that was never an option for me. I had to go out and ensure that all of that was there. So that's kind of cool. All right, here's a really easy one for us. Instead, we have to ask a lot, right? We have to ask to be shown. Where did you put this? Where is it going to be? Do we have that, the 50% in all of that, right? So here's one that is wonderful. We know in those locations, 50% of them have to be controlled receptacles. Well, this again is where the NEC says, let me help you out, energy code. Because the controlled receptacle has to be marked, which is what our lovely little green dot here is telling us. So that means I am really good at looking around a room and finding green dots. Now, it doesn't have to be green. I have one that shows blue and so forth, but I I can look around and kind of guesstimate that we are at 50% of all of these. And I can pretty much guarantee you are not going to find ones that are, 75% of the room is going to be controlled receptacles. You're going to probably find that maybe they're only at 40% of controlled receptacles. So that's one that I think is almost a slam dunk in the sense that it's so spelled out for anybody. I can look for a dot on a receptacle. I don't know about you, Troy. What do you think?
Well, usually what I do when I walk in on those is I ask the contractor, "Hey, how did you signify which one of these is controlled and which one isn't?" So that way, I get them to help me out on the see, there's one over there, there's one over there. It's blue, it's green, it's orange, or you know, I've had actually the outside trim plates be a different color.
Oh, yeah. I haven't had that one. I haven't had that one. That would be a good one. Now, the one thing I do want you all to remember is there are some exceptions to this. So, break rooms, I think it would be really poor judgment to have the refrigerator plugged into a controlled receptacle or even the vending machine. And it's definitely anybody who knows me. It would be in poor judgment to have that coffee maker placed on a controlled receptacle. So just keep in mind there are some exceptions to all of this because that's just the reality. And like I said, lovely green dot. This one's green. I should have put in the blue dot so that everybody could have seen that there are different colors out there. Now, one that most people probably are not exactly aware of is that elevator cabs actually has criteria for energy efficiency in there. You have to, and this again is something that is going to be placed on the plans, which often refers to the spec book on it, quite honestly. But the luminaires in an elevator cab have to be less than the 35 lumens per watts. The ventilation fans in an elevator without air conditioning can go all the way up to 0.33 watts per CFM when it's at its max, and then just controls it's going to de-energize everything, when it's been inactive for those 15 minutes. So often, a lot of this is kind of looked at with the commissioning agent, and a lot of it is looked at with the plans examiner because they're going to catch this stuff at the beginning. And quite honestly, elevator cabs now are kind of that they're not, I don't want to say prefabricated, but a lot of this is already being done with it in it. So some of it is stuff that you're going to, kind of just go out there. Okay, so what do we have in there? Great. And we would kind of call it good there. Now I know we're getting to the very end here. So here becomes the fun thing. Whose responsibility is it to inspect what? So this is where we want to ensure to understand, as I've alluded to and Troy's alluded to, we have commissioning. We are a team. Remember, we are always a team. And so our team is, we partner with our functional testing agencies, our commissioning agents. They are going to take care of all the functioning type of controls for us. And with that, remember, you can ask any question at any time. This is your helpline. We are always happy to help with questions that are coming across your desk. And as Troy has mentioned before, sometimes it's good to have a outside entity answering that question because one, it frees up the time of the staff, but sometimes hearing it from somebody other than the building official does help to kind of assist with the process for you all. And of course, we have our website. Don't forget, you can come here, And in there, you're going to find all of our technical documents and resources that we've created for you to help you, whether it's designing or plan review or contractor or inspections, to navigate the process for it. Survey's going to pop up, and here is my contact information. And you all have Troy's contact information. Please feel free to reach out to us anytime. We are happy to answer any questions you have. And as always, we appreciate you hanging out with us today. So we'll bid you all a wonderful Thursday and see you next week.
Hey, Richard, I put those the slide deck in the chat at the very beginning. If you can't get them from there, send us an email. We'll send you those back out via email.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
You
you,
guys
everybody.
are wonderful.